I'm Indy Nidal and this is Across the Airwaves, where I read out some of your most interesting, informative, entertaining, or even controversial comments to bring them to a wider audience. Today's episode is dedicated, though, to our recent announcement video about how we will cover D-Day in 2023. As announced, we will be live for 24 hours straight, 24 15-minute episodes. One each hour of the day, and 45 minutes of live-streamed background stories. Deeper dives into specifics, expert talks, tech videos, and us talking with you live. From the studio the other 45 minutes of each hour. Marcus C. comments under the video, I love the channel. However, the topic has been covered enough for me. I would much prefer a special on Bagration. Glad that you love us, Marcus. I'll get to Bagration in a minute, I've got something to say. Our D-Day coverage will not only be spectacular, but will also be a never-before-seen angle. On D-Day, okay. I've said before on this series, history does not happen in a vacuum. So, on top of how the people on the ground in Normandy experienced the day, we'll cover the day from the perspective of the rest of the world, all around the globe from Tokyo. And then all around to Vladivostok. Not just, the short trip. Because, this day was one of the first real-time globally covered news events, cabled out to the world as it happened, and one that happened to immediately affect a huge chunk of the global population. Among the Allies, all eyes were suddenly on Normandy with hope. Among the Axis they watched as yet another day they had long feared arrived. There are, of course, many such days when the world shook in these toiling, sweaty, bloody years. You see what I did there? And many, many events of the war came together to create its outcome, but there were few moments when so much was hanging in the balance. For everyone in just a few hours. Stalin had waited for 3 years, constantly pressing his allies to open a Western front. And if the D-Day invasion succeeded, the Red Army could launch their impending gargantuan offensive, knowing they'll suffer smaller losses in personnel and advance more quickly. In Italy, the Allies were in bad need of a period of less pressure to regroup and recuperate. After nearly a year of bitter fighting, and only even taking Rome 24 hours earlier. The day has a real impact in the Pacific as well, as Jimmy Penrose writes. Please, if possible, you should try to focus on the fact that, simultaneously to the Normandy invasion, there was an equally significant operation in the Pacific theater. They both left their ports within just a few hours of each other, but the Marines invading Saipan had a slightly longer distance to travel. That invasion was no less important to the outcome of the war in the Pacific than Overlord was to the outcome in Europe. But it always hides in the shadow of Normandy. I've always thought those two operations should have equal billing. I don't think they happened at the same time by happenstance. And we sure will, Jimmy, but we'll go further than that. We want to look at the day also through the eyes of the people of Germany, fearing that soon the war will physically reach them. The Red Army officers champing at the bit to get moving west once again after a spring of stalemate. The Japanese hoping that a bigger fight involving the US in Europe might take some pressure off them, and the Chinese fearing it very well might. The resistance and partisan fighters across occupied Europe, listening in on their radio sets, anticipating that they may soon be at the very front lines of the war. But why D-Day? What about all of the other major events? Or as Mark Poole writes, why not do this about Kursk instead? The Eastern Front is where the Wehrmacht was actually defeated. This is just to appeal to Westerners so they give you more money. Well, Mark, spoilers, thanks, Kursk will be in the rearview mirror when we arrive at D-Day. But you can bet that our coverage of not just Kursk, but the entire Soviet 43-44 offensives will be massive. Why would we suddenly begin to compromise our coverage of the war? We're announcing this now for several reasons. First of all, we need time to produce this and go on location already next year to have Time to edit and release it on time, and we have some special, really cool technical reasons for going on location for this specific one, but you'll have to wait for that. Second of all, we need lighthouse events that pull people towards our content, specifically, so they can discover all the less popularly known, but equally, or in your opinion more important events. Lighthouse events need to be compressed and have a specific beginning and an end that we can do justice within a single day. They also need to be well known enough, by enough people, to work as lighthouses. Last but not least, they do need to be financeable, not because we want more money, but because all of what we do costs a lot of money to provide free access for hundreds of thousands of people to top quality historical content, and this extra content is 24 hours of produced content on top of our regular hour or so a week. Hupling a Berger writes, very much looking forward to this extravaganza, but I fear that it is going to come at the expense of the equally important, far vaster and much more complicated but slower moving Operation Bagration. But maybe you'll confound my expectations, a delightful experience in nearly every context. I'm certain we will confound you in a good way. As I said, we will never compromise our coverage of the war. The regular episodes have grown longer and longer as the war has grown in scope. I've even added extra regular episodes in weeks where it gets really intense. Every time a big new event happens, we do a bunch of specials about it, and its background and related topics. We will always continue doing that. Think what we've already done. When Germany invaded France, we went on location to the Maginot Line, and made loads of specials around it all. We wanted to send Sparty to Poland, Ukraine and Lithuania to follow the advance of the initial invasion of Barbarossa, and the